Hello, my Logik friends. Happy Sunday, and there's already a plethora of friends in the chat. Hello, FlyFX, Yan Clyer, Michael Landon, David Kreitz, Josh Lawrence, Richard Betts. Look at all these names. Luke, David Kreitz, again, George, Marmutas. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I can't lie to you. It's a bit of a rainy day, but it's sunny here in the world of Logik because our guests are the coolest people in the Flame world, and they're taking time out of their... I'm going to say this a couple times, but I think it's pretty special that they're taking time on a Sunday to be here to promote our favorite program of all time. That's damn nice of them. And Fred is in the chat. Mr. Apollo. Oh, and it's already time. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Logik Live episode 137. I'm your host, Jeff Kyle. We're going to jump into the slideshow here. Thanks for being here. I hope you're ready for an amazing show. Here we go. This episode of Logik Live is brought to you by Looper, the platform that allows you to stream your Flame sessions online with very low latency, tons of chat features, and some super flexible plans. We have a special deal for our Logik friends who are new customers to Looper. If you use the link here on the screen, tinyurl.com/looper-logic, when you sign up to Looper, instead of getting the free account, you get 1 month of their Plus plan for free, which is a great way to see if the service makes sense for you. And our other very familiar sponsor is none other than our many friends over at Boris FX. If you need Boris FX plugins, you can save 15% on all the Boris FX products that we know and love. Everything here on the screen available with a great discount if you use our affiliate links located right here with the lens flare. Head on over to logik.tv/BorisFX and click one of the links there for a great deal if you need it. We have a merch store with t-shirts, mugs, notebooks, and a lot more than that. Pick up some Logik merch at the merch store on the logik.tv website. A huge shout out to every one of our Patreon patrons helping to support what makes this show happen right here, right now, week after week. Thank you for that. Here is our up-to-date patron list. Just updated it just before the show. Thank you to every one of these people on the screen right now. We are clocking in at 156 patrons as of this week. Again, big thank you to everyone here for supporting the community. If you'd like to support what we're doing here on Logik, and it is very much appreciated, it comes with a few bonus perks. My favorite is and has always been the patrons Q&A chat that we do after just about every show, where in this case, after the show, we're heading over to Zoom to talk some more with my guests from the Flame development team. Fred Warren and Stephane Labrie, and Jasmine Frenette will be there as well, so that'll be a wonderful bonus. So it's a full house from Autodesk, where we'll just covering everything that we didn't have a chance to talk about during the live show, which is always a great time. So if you aren't already, head over to patreon.com/LogikTV and support for as little as $5 a month. And my cat is invading the show right now, so I have to throw my cat across the room. There we go. If you haven't heard about it before, here you go. Logik Academy Pro is a learning platform put together by Logik co-founder Randy McEntee, taking Logik Academy here on YouTube and bringing it to the next level. It's a monthly subscription, and it connects you with a handful of Flame artist instructors to level up your Flame skills. There's quite a large volume of content up there, so take a look and see if it makes sense for you. There is a trial period where within a week or two you can cancel, and if you aren't, and you won't be charged. So take a peek, and if you're registered for today's show over on the logik.tv website, then you might walk away with a month free. So stay tuned, and if you're interested, make sure you're registered for today's show. And how relevant is this? If you haven't heard, then take a look at the title of this show here on YouTube, because Flame 2025.1 has been released, the .1 update, just about a week and a half ago. So coincidentally, that is the subject for today's show here. So why don't we use that opportunity to jump right in. Hello, my guests today need no introduction. If you are new, then maybe you haven't heard of them, but if you've been here before, then they are a household name. They are none other than Fred Warren and Stephane Labrie, and they're here right now. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Hello.
I'm doing great, and I just heard that we have another special guest that's flying in, and here he is, Jasmine Frenette. Oh, look at this. We have the beautiful squares, the Hollywood squares, the Brady Bunch squares. It's so wonderful. Thanks for being here, guys.
I'm not sure what you meant, Jeff. Like, how would you rather spend your your Sunday afternoon than like with you and our beloved users. That's a perfect
Well, I'm glad you
perfect.
feel that. I definitely feel that way, but I couldn't speak for all of you. So it's wonderful to hear that you also feel that way. And we have a very active, very happy chat here, welcoming you in. So thank you, all of you, for being here. For those who don't know, these are the people who make Flame happen. Everybody. So there you go. I'll give
Just a
a.
small part of us, just a small part, but
Absolutely.
Well,
we're part
We're
of
four.
that.
well, there you
We're
go.
representing the team today.
Yeah.
But it's damn nice of you to be here, and I'm excited for this show. And oh my god, I'm sorry. I think it seems my cat is sitting on my keyboard as she often does. Oh geez, you can't plan for these things, can you?
The magic of live events.
Yeah, live events. Well, I guess maybe we should start to jump right into it because we have a lot to cover and we want to make sure we don't run out of time here. I think our first so just to set the stage, Jasmine is here mostly in spirit. He's going to be answering any of the hard-hitting questions that you have, so feel free to ask questions in the chat. He's, of course, going to be here for our patrons Q&A afterwards, but mostly it's going to be a presentation starting with Stephane here, who's going to talk about some of the capabilities and new graphical updates and such, and then Fred will be talking about the new features inside of the application. So why don't we jump right into it and explore what's new in Flame with the .1 release.
Very good. So let's start. So update 1, first update of 2025 has been released some weeks ago. So usually in the past, update 1 was a small release with some small capabilities, right, to allow larger studios who have seen the major release in spring to upgrade, right? And that's still the case. I mean, we have this summer update, but since last year, with 2024.8.1, we upgraded, in fact, the Metal and Vulkan graphic API, which was a great invisible feature, like I said last year, event. And this year, well, we also have other great capabilities in this small update. So let me just go through the slides. So let's talk about hardware and configuration. So as Update 1, if you are current to 2025 release, will be a very easy update. So there's the supported operating system from the Rocky 8587 and 93, which we introduced last spring. macOS, the latest third operating system. And as I told you last year when we talked about Apple Silicon, well, we recommend you to have at least macOS 13 if you want to take advantage of your great hardware. There's a DKU for updated drivers with this update. So the P6000 from NVIDIA is the minimum certified graphic card. There's an update of the driver, so that way we can be compatible with other solution installed on your workstation. With the DKU, there's two updates. There's a Firefox update for Rocky 8, and there's an OpenSSH security update, which is super important to get on your workstation because security, is quite important. Configuration-wise, so if you have experimented the cloud workflows, so we have what we call the base Amazon machine image, which is your operating system and your driver, which is in sync with the desktop products. We updated the networking part, which is the AFA here to 133, and there's also a new generation of instances, the G6, which are super cool virtual computer that you're going to be able to use when working with AWS. So follow the link on that screen if you want to know more. But I'm going to give you the highlights of the G6. So G6 is high performance for graphic intensive workflow, and that's great because Flame on the cloud or Flame, in general, is all about high performance graphic intensive workflows. This configuration has the latest and greatest NVIDIA L4 Tensor Core GPU, which is great for AI graphic workloads or users. Well, in fact, it's part of the Ada Lovelace architecture generation. So latest and greatest graphics with 24 gig of VRAM. So that's the configuration we recommend. So the G6.8X large, 24 gig of VRAM, 124 gig of RAM. And, I mean, as you can see, this is a great offering. So if you want to play on the cloud, have a look at this great configuration. AMI is available on our system requirement page if you want to have access to it. HP anywhere, because you need to connect to your remote workstation or remote instances on the cloud. So HP Anywhere just released their 24.07 version some days ago, in fact last week, and that's the official support for Rocky Linux 9.3. So we closely work with them to ensure we are in sync as far as offering. So they delivered their new release available for Mac and Windows workstation as far as client. So follow the link on the screen if you want to know more about the new capabilities of HP Anywhere. We've added the new configuration for the qualified workstation. So we qualified the Dell 7960 server with Rocky 9.3. So, and we went back to Flame Family 2025 if you want to use this server in your data center, workstation facility, whatever. So have a look again on the page. This qualification was done with the RTX 6000 added generation, but any added generation card will work on this configuration. Same thing for the Lenovo P7. So Lenovo added support for the A5000 and the RTX 5000. So we also added these to our qualified workstation. And we even went back to 2024 to ensure that you guys could have a workflow with that, because that is supported. This workstation is supported on Rocky 8.7. So that's why you have access to the 2024 stream on this qualified configuration. Something new that we are adding is the ability to use Flame family products on Linux on mobile workstation, or I would say very fancy laptops. So the HP ZBook, Fury G10 and G11, great configuration, great mobile workstations, running RTX 5000 at that generation. Again, we qualified the Rocky Linux 9.3, which means that the first version you can install is Flame 25, sorry about that we released last April. So if you want to know more about this configuration, there's a quick link on this page, but there's also a microsite that you will see on the HP, which give you all the information about the ZBook Fury. So it's all about NVIDIA graphics up to 100 gig of VRAM. You can also, it comes with an HP Dream color, meaning you have 10-bit colors on your mobile workstation. They promote this laptop as 8K workflow capable, and I was quite surprised when I was able to play back real-time 8K R3D files, full resolution on this mobile workstation. So have a look at that, and if you want to know if the G10 or G11 is the right configuration for you, so there's also this page on their micro website, which gives you more details about, but they are quite similar except the generation, so when it has been released, right? So G10 has been released, I think, last April or May from HP. So
And
if you have a
Stephane,
need, yes.
We were talking before the show a little bit, but I think it's a great thing to increase the offering of the mobile workstations to more than just the Mac world,
totally
because
agree
that's
with
how it's
you,
been for a while.
Absolutely, it was your only option. So now you have more options, depending if you want to take the power of NVIDIA graphic on the go, or you need other product suites on the go. So now you have options. But not only that, because the laptop support is one thing, but there's also the infrastructure around the laptop. And that's why we've added in this update support for the Thunderbolt version of the preview card from Blackmagic Design and AGA. So you are able on the go to use one of these cards. So you have high quality monitoring on the go. So that means you have a complete solution with you while you have to go on set, and you don't want to bring a workstation with you. But again, like I said, you have a lot of options from the desktop to the laptop, and even including the Apple Studio, which is a small form factor computer that many of you have. So again, depending on how far you need to go and what is the power you have, well, you have options to run our products outside of the office. There was an issue logged to our support some months ago related to issues rendering DPX files, and it was in fact after investigation related to StoreNext. So many people using StoreNext SAN in fact had problems rendering DPX when DPX in fact is your cache format. So that was creating instability with the software. So if you were to work in uncompress and Flame, well, DPX would be the format of choice. So even if you work with QuickTime and then you create timeline effects rendering, well, the instability was seen. So we found the root cause, and then Quantum was able to find the issue and fix it in their StoreNext 7.2. So if you are using StoreNext, make sure before upgrading to 2025 or 2025 update 1 to upgrade your StoreNext, so that way you're not going to find any instability problems. And nobody likes these kind of issues that might be visible like random, but it's instability. So nobody wants to compromise the experience finishing with our products. So have a look on the Quantum website for the StoreNext 7.2 update. AVIO, so we try to stay in sync with our partners' release. So Blackmagic Design release SDK 14 and driver 14.1 for macOS and Linux. So that has been released some weeks ago. It's compatible also not only with 25.1, but also up to 24.x. And it fixes an old-standing issues reported by our friend Alan Lattery, which we were seeing a full range RGB not being correctly displayed. So Blackmagic recognized the issue and made a fix. And also this driver update has been qualified with RARKey 9.3. So that means you have great color, and you also have the support for your operating system. So we don't install Blackmagic Design software with the DKU, so you need to go on their website and install it on macOS and Linux, and then you're going to be able to have a great experience with the latest and greatest driver. NDI, as you remember, in our spring release, we updated NDI to version 6, which brought 10-bit support, which is very, very good features for broadcasting your content to remote customers and collaborators. So 6.01 is a minor update, but there's a nice feature that NDI added on their website is the ability to stream the content of your screen to remote customers or remote collaborators. Going to remote.ndi.tv, you are allowed to either share your webcam or share your screen, which I'm going to use right now here. And you can select which screen you want to share. In this case, I would be sharing my Flame screen because I want my remote collaborator to see what I'm doing. And then you can screen that. What's gonna the icon on the bottom left side? Just send an email, in fact, to share your connection. So then you can have a secure connection sent to your email client to your customers, and then your customer have this QR code, and they're gonna be able to open a Studio Monitor, which is part of NDI tool. This capability, by the way, only works on Windows, so you need a Windows Studio Monitor to be able to visualize the secured NDI stream. And then you are able to monitor your NDI session remotely through the internet without having, to make complicated setups. So that's great. Last but not least, we've made some. You've seen in 2025 we made some modification to the preference menu. So we kind of reorganize everything based on user, project, application version, and system. So we made some changes in preparation for a future release where we're going to simplify media management in our products. Something that if you attend Logik event at NAB or IBC, we discussed. So later I'm going to be able to disclose more about that. But in update 1, we've reworked the space calculation user interface. So this is what you are able to see in Flame 2025. So some options that some of you might not understand what they do. And and of course, yes, the video preferred estimate is when you have timeline effects, right? So you have timeline effects, you can estimate how much room of storage you need to render your sequence. But in update 1, we kind of remove some old legacy options, and we rename, in fact, the options so you can estimate the cache that you need for your timeline effects, and by pressing the button, you know how much you need to compute your sequence. So that's update 1 on my side, and is there any question about these capabilities before we jump to Fred, the presentation?
So far, so good. I am a big fan of that change there because I think in the past it was referring to what it was. I remember seeing, it's still there, the frames and the time code, but it's nice to see the space calculation as well.
Yeah, nobody counts, in fact, a storage room in time code these days, right? So you want to know in gig and terabytes how much you have, and that's why we are modernizing this part for now, and then later we're going to be able to give you more options on how you can manage your content. But that's going to be part of a future Logik Live event.
Yeah, and it's a small. I think most people would argue it's a small change to be adjusting the preferences like this, but I think it's very welcome. And I know that I think it was John Agg who's pushing hard for a search menu in here. I get that a search in here is probably very complicated, but I think this is a great compromise. Is like another, a great compromise to just segment it and make it not too overwhelming.
Yeah. One advice we give to people, if you haven't jumped to 2025, is spend some time before going into production, just to have a look at the various preferences, just to make sure you know where you are when you are with the customers, and you don't want to be searching, for your default value for a given tool. I mean, they're quite similar in most of them are quite similar as what they were before, but it's good to revisit them because you want to be fluent in the preferences before going too deep.
Looks like our friend Tim Farrell has one question about preferences in this space calculation here. I think it's is the frame count based on the project resolution? Do you know
Yes,
that?
absolutely. Yes, it is the case.
It is. Looks like the answer
Yes.
is yes, Tim.
Yes.
And John is in the chat, and he is very interested in that search feature. So I hope
No,
I
of
didn't
course.
soak the
Yes,
fire
yes.
too much. But hey, thanks a bunch, Stephane. That was
My
wonderful.
pleasure. And later if there's a Q&A, I'm going to be able to answer more questions.
Absolutely. So up next is our friend Fred, who will be talking more about the features. So let's hop on over to there. Is it all right if I share your screen here, Fred?
Yeah, but maybe just before I start my presentation, there's maybe a little, I just want to mention what I'm gonna present, because obviously, probably most of the people watching are aware that we've worked with you and the Logik team to put up 5 videos for like the bigger features on the Flame Learning channel on YouTube, right? And at this point, we're expecting that most of you have already looked at those videos. So I don't want to repeat what you have already seen. So what I wanted to do on my side is I'm going to start with smaller features that were not, let's say, bigger highlights of the release, but that can be useful. You just talked with Stephane about the space calculation. That is a smaller change, but that can be quite useful. So I'm going to go through some of these, mainly in batch and in the tools. And then after that, we will come back to the 2 machine learning features that we have released with update 1, which are the Timewarp and the Inference node. And I just want to give you some hints and gotchas around those features that maybe we didn't highlight in the video that is on the Flame Learning channel. So this is what's on the agenda on my side.
I think that's a great idea. When you mentioned it to me, I was in love with it. And so the only catch, I think, is if people were really looking forward to talking about one of those features, and if maybe they're not in the patrons chat, I don't think it'd be appropriate to, lock them out of that opportunity. So I think I would just say right now, if anyone has any specific questions about some of the new features for the .1 release, talk about it in the comments here on YouTube, and we can absolutely address it. But
yeah, we could have time, and as you mentioned, Jasmine, who is the tech lead for those 2 projects, is with us. So if there are some more technical questions, he can answer them, and he can also correct me if I say something stupid along the way. So now you can switch to my screen so we can have a look at the PowerPoint. And I just, not related really to update 1, but I wanted to start with just a reminder that in 2025, we made a big change with the addition of the version agnostic user profile, and that update 1 is the first release where you're going to enjoy one of the bigger benefit of it is that you won't have to create a user profile. We're just going to use the one that is already there and that you have set in 2025, but you will still have access to the new preferences we've put out there, the new keyboard shortcuts. So everything should be transparent. We didn't have any problem throughout the beta cycle of 2025.1 update. So I think we're good and that there's no problem, no regression. If so, of course, let our support team know and correct it for the future. Then I wanted to quickly highlight some changes that we've made to plugins. So the first one is around Matchbox and LightBux. We were still using pretty old version of GLSL for Matchbox and LightBux. We were at versions, if I'm not mistaken, 1.3. So we have now updated them so we can support GLSL 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, and 4.6 for Matchbox. So again, that's a benefit from the architecture work that we've done in the not in the 2025 cycle, but in the 2024 cycle, if you remember, with the move to a Metal and a Vulkan. So this allows developers to have more options, more mathematical equations, just more functions supported. And we have already updated many of the shaders that are distributed with Flame. And you can refer to the documentation for more information on what are the new items that are supported. The one specific thing with LightBux is that we only support GLSL version 4.6. And the main reason is that with modern GLSL version, in action, we cannot mix them. And within action, the nature of Lightbox is that you are mixing a GLSL shader to render the scene. So we limit the development or the support, sorry, to a 4.6 to avoid the problem with that situation. And again, you can refer to the documentation for a complete list of the new equations, if you want, or new features that we support with those new versions.
Fred, we have a question or two, if we can, about matchboxes. Maury had an indirect one that I think I wanted to ask as well. Is this Matchbox update kind of an additive update where the old versions will still work, but then we have access to new versions?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, so then Maury wouldn't have to worry too much about making sure his old ones are still working, I assume.
That's correct. So it's not as with the changes that we've made, for example, with PySide 2 and PySide 6, right? Where there are some cases where you need to update the script for them to work in the new version. In that case, all the shaders that are already working will still continue to work. It's just that they are limited to some equations not being supported.
Great. And then Jan just wanted to know if there's any chance that this kind of GLSL update will help with some of the Matchbox shaders' performance. I wonder about that.
To be honest, I don't know. I think that more the changes that we've made, and maybe Jasmine could confirm, but the changes that we've made last year with Metal and with Vulkan were probably more targeted toward performance improvements than the update versions, where you basically get some more operations possible.
Great, thanks.
Okay. For OpenFX, this is not something that is really targeted to most of you and to Flame artists, but I just wanted to point you that we've made some improvements to our OpenFX support, and this has a little update on the Flame side, because something that we've done specifically for OpenFX, we have propagated it elsewhere inside the application. I also wanted to just, and I'm just going to give you a hint here, but this also allow more company and plugins developer to actually create OFX plugin for Flame. And we've been working with some of those companies, and in the near future, hopefully, you're gonna see some more plugins being available for Flame. So I'm gonna jump in the application here to show you, for you, the Flame artist, what are some of the addition or changes that we've made to OpenFX affect you. And we are using here a Revision FX OFX plugin. And if I have my auto key on here, you see now that if the plugin actually creates a channel for a pop-up, a drop-down button, we will actually create keyframes for that channel and indicated it to you the same as if you were actually modifying a keyframe here. So this one, so you see here when I have a keyframe, right, and I'm on the frame, I have this yellow line at the bottom. Now if I do this with this drop down button, you see that the header of the drop down button actually gets the indication. So you see that you are animating that selection. So you see here, if I switch, you see that the options inside the drop down actually changes. We've also done that for the toggle buttons. So in that case here, if I enable it, you're going to see that the little colored square at the end of the color button will turn yellow to indicate that you are on a keyframe. So if you move away, it's going to be the same blue as the line underneath, and then it indicates you, if you turn it off, that you have a channel. So it goes from on and off, and you get the indication. And we applied this to other location in the application. So if you go to actions, for example, in the node prefs, you're going to have the same for the motion blur. Okay, and what is nice is that we've also added the context menu for it. So it's really easy for you now to just open the context menu and say, I want to reset completely my motion blur channel so it's not animated. So you just apply the reset and that's it.
That is amazing, Fred. And as a working flame artist, I just have to insist just how awesome that is and how amazed I am that it's finally here, because I can't tell you how many times I've run into scenarios where we, like, me or someone else has accidentally keyframed the motion blur, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
So if you see a toggle button like that, because we don't have like inside Flame a drop-down button that can be animated, unless I'm mistaken, but I don't think so. But if you see a toggle button that you can animate, but that doesn't get that indication, that that context menu, let us know and we'll see what we can do about it. Next, we actually gonna go with a request that was made last November in the reverse user group. It was one of the entry from Brian Bailey. Okay, and for that, I'm gonna just show you, I won't go through the frequency node. It's a new node that is actually used to separate the frequency, the image into multiple bands. So if you haven't seen it, you can go to the Flame Learning channel and watch the video that Jeff has made. What I wanted to highlight here is that if I switch to my two of view, and I say I have my comp here to actually see the output of my frequency, then I will be able to actually paint out this. Okay, so let me just do this. I'm sorry, because I seem that my paint, I forgot to do something, but I'm just gonna quickly do it. It's not that complicated to do, right? So in here, in my paint node, so I'm gonna go to my F4, I'm gonna select this brush and just perform quickly a rect clone to get rid of that mole. And now I'm gonna go to my comp node to see that I've removed the mole but kept the texture underneath, right? And what I want to do is maybe just adjust the blur inside the frequency to get a better idea. So I'm gonna actually have my comp node context on the right, and I'm gonna have my frequency on the left. But the entry from Brian was that when you would actually zoom in and pan on one part of the image, the context wouldn't follow. So we have introduced next to the viewing controls this link button there that will actually make sure that both viewport are zoom and pan in the same way, so you can easily have a better idea and a better look. So now I can actually play with my blur and see how it affects both viewports, with both areas being centered at the same time. There's no shortcut to enable, disable that mode, and it applies to all the places where there are multiple viewports, including, for example, in the timeline, in the triptych view, and in the source sequence view. But you can, in here in batch, actually, it's taken into account when you create a layout and you specify that you want to save the viewport layout. So you could create a layout that only does that and assign a shortcut to it. Next, I'm gonna go
Fred,
back.
the audience went wild for that one. I just have to make sure that you know that.
Great.
That is a very good one. It's excellent for painting. It's going to be so useful for painting.
We're happy to know that. Next one, another flame feedback quickly. When you would create a BFX clip from your schematic, it wouldn't render it, it will just show it. But we had some users who said, I would rather have it render right away so I don't have to go through the hassle of rendering it. So now when you create a BFX, you see that it's going to render the effect by default. And if we look at the preferences in the in the batch and BFX, so in user, you have this preference now that says BFX clip render on creation. So if you prefer the old behavior, you can always turn that setting off so you get the same result as before. Something that was mentioned on the Logik forum was that when we introduced the subtitle tool, the result for the quotes were always like the straight quotes, and you couldn't get the curly quotes. So that means that, for example, if you were going to another application, you would get the curly quotes, but in Flame you wouldn't. So what we've done about that is in the preferences for the tools and timeline effects, we've added under subtitle a display smart quotes option that is enabled by default. When this is enabled, you will get the curly version of the quotes. Take note that it's the only place where you're gonna get the curly quotes in here, okay? In the text document, for example, you're still gonna have these straight quotes, but the rendering inside the image will use the I think it's called the smart quotes. Sorry, the curly quotes, but the real name is the smart quotes. So that's it for the subtitle. Then I wanted to quickly, I won't go through just for the sake of time, go through like doing all the example. I just want to point out that we've made some improvements to the lens distortion node. Quickly, the center now is calculated for all the models. The focal length is calculated for the fisheye model. The controls, okay, it's something a little bit I wouldn't say hidden, but there are some limits, right, to those fields. So this one goes from minus 0.5 to 0.5, and you cannot go past that. But in some cases, when you would calculate, the algorithm would actually trigger a value higher than that. So what we've done is that you still can't scroll past those minimum and maximum value, but if you calculate something that has a lot of distortion, then we will allow you to go past it, and in your animation channel you will have the correct values that are actually creating the proper on distortion. And finally, we have a new mode here for the calculation when you create your own spline. So if you have a shot in which the amount of distortion changes a long time, you can create your splines, animate them, and then when you're gonna calculate, you are gonna have the choice between static, which is basically just using the information at the current frame and set the controls, dynamic, that's gonna analyze and calculate using all the frames where you have a keyframes for your splines, and then it will create a animation over time for the control. So each frame that is being analyzed will actually have its own set of result controls, and then average will analyze all the frames where you have a keyframe, but it's gonna average the value, so you won't have animation over on your control. So just a quick note on lens distortion, and also a quick note on a match grain, where by default a batch group has a value of 100. Sometimes ago we changed that behavior so it adapts to the duration of the first clip you drop in your batch group. And when we introduced match grain in 2025, we did it so that by default, you would actually analyze the first 20 frames of your clip, because usually over time the luminosity won't change that much, and the first 20 frame should be good and work. But we added an option for the setup range. So what it's gonna do is that when you create the match grain node, it will go from the first frame of your batch group until the last frame of your batch group. We're gonna divide the last frame by 20 and create the amount of step, so that the every 20 one frame are analyzed, and that you have still 20 frames that are being analyzed, but throughout the clips, and then it can just adjust from there. Two small things that I wanted to mention also, more on the application side. The first one, with all of the color coding improvements that we've done, you will probably notice that we've changed how we apply the color coding, mainly in the media panel. So if I switch here to a green color, you don't see that much difference that with what you had before. But before, when you had a color patch, we would actually add a shadow underneath the text to make sure that when you have a color coding with a higher luminance value, you could actually see the white text over the color. So we changed it so the now the luminance of the color drives if the text will be shown in white or black. So if you use one of our own preset colors, so let's say yellow, you're going to see that now the text is displayed in black rather than white with a black shadow. And if you use custom colors, just be aware that the threshold for that is actually, let me use it with this one, that the threshold for that is here, and is around the in 8-bit 115 for the luma. So it means that if I go to, let's say, 100, then the text gonna be white, because we had to pick a value. We did a bunch of tests, and 115 was what was working most of the time. So we went with this. You probably saw in the Flame Learning channel video about the markers, that we can now export the content of the markers view in a XML or CSV file. Just know that we can also do this for the conform view. So in here, you have the export table contents, and you can elect to export in CSV or XML only the selected items, or in that case segments, or all of them, and in CSV all the columns or only the visible one. And by that we mean that if you right click at the top here, you can decide which column you want to see in the conform table, so you can organize it to then export it so it can be looked at on a different machine. Quick note on the support for the centralized configuration, so the sysconfig file. You know that we introduced that in 2025. If you go to Autodesk CFG, you won't see any sysconfig file in there, because they are per release. So you need to go to dot end the release, and in there you're gonna see the sysconfig file. In this version, we have actually added support for more stuff. So you see under configuration files, you can now centralize the channel rules, the color coding rules, and the resolution custom. And the change that we've made is that a lot of people were saying, I want to use the same file all the time rather than redo it at every version. So you can now copy that file directly under Autodesk CFG, and this will have precedence over the ones that are in the version. So it means that you can always set it once and use it for like the rest of the workstation's life. The one thing though to be aware of is that, let's say in a future version we would add support for more things. It means that you will be the one that will need to go grab this from the version file and copy it to your lone file that you are using in there. That's it mainly for the flame feedback items that I wanted to go over. So we can now go over the machine learning stuff. So what I wanted to mention to you there is mainly there was like questions about the OS support, the performance on the Logik forum. So I wanted to quickly give you an idea of what is supported on for each OS. So for the time warp in the inference on Linux, there's a button that is called ML Engine Cache. When this button is disabled, the inference is performed on the GPU. When this button is enabled, we are using the NVIDIA's Tensor RT to do the inference. Okay, there's no possibility to run the inference on a CPU on Linux. On macOS, there's a technical limitation that we are working with third-party vendors to actually try to get rid of that prevent us from using the GPU or the Apple's neural network. So you are limited to CPU. Okay. Obviously, that means that macOS will be slower than what you have on Linux. The good news is that we are aware of that, and the improvements that we are monitoring is the support for CPU on Linux, just so we have a even playing field between the two OS, and then the possibility to run the inferences on Apple's neural network. So those are things that we are looking at, and hopefully we'll be able to deliver at some point. One of the reasons you may want to use CPU, okay, rather than the GPU for performance is because mainly for the time warp, which can use multiple inferences, we do not recommend using the ML mode on 8K footage or above because it requires too much memory to complete the operation. But you could, in some cases, be able to do it using the CPU. So this is why we're gonna add the CPU mode, but obviously it's gonna be much slower than what you have on the GPU. Quick note also, there's only a one model that we have released for the time warp. So when you select the machine learning mode, there's a lone model, but our intention is to keep improving that model, so releasing new models at some point, but we will always keep the models that we have released, so you don't have to redo all your processing all the time for your time warp that you have created before. Just before I talk about the inference a little bit more, I'm gonna go back to the application, and I just wanted to quickly show you a little gotcha, okay, with the time warp and at some point the inferences also. So we're gonna go in the player here, and I'm gonna apply a time warp to that shot. I'm going to change the speed, just going to put anything really. And when I'm going to switch to to machine learning, sorry, the software will actually start preparing the inference, right? And I just want you to know that you have a smaller window of opportunity at the beginning when the software is preparing the model and the inference to abort. Okay, after that, when it starts like calculating and generating the frames, then you are kind of stuck and you have to wait. But if you switch to machine learning and you see this, then you can actually abort it. And this is the gotcha. Okay, this will result in preview unavailable. So it means that you're gonna have to change the frame and then retrigger the rendering. And in batch, we do not support inside the viewport the possibility to display messages like these, right? So it means that if you change the speed and let me put, let's say this, and switch here to machine learning, and that you abort, then you're gonna get a empty viewport with no result. So if you come across that, is that you probably aborted the preparation of a time warp, and then you need to switch to the next frame to actually retrigger the model, and then you're gonna get your result there. For the inference, so I just wanted to say that the inference, if you haven't figured it out, for us it's the equivalent of Matchbox for machine learning. It allows you to take any Onix model and use it in Flame. When I say any, I shouldn't have said that. There are some models that will not work. The proof is what Tiago posted, I think, last week, for example, where there was a model expecting an input with a single alpha channel, but we don't support that. So it's not all the models that will work, but hopefully most of them will. We do not support PyTorch models, but it is possible to convert some PyTorch models to Onix. The reason why we went with Onix is that from the test that we've done with Flame, it's faster than PyTorch, so we wanted to give you something that would perform well, because sometimes those models are quite slow from the get-go, so we really wanted something that was fast enough. And we do not plan on distributing our own train models, so it's not something, it's like legally it's just too complex to be able to actually deliver train models for us. So we wanted to give you the node and let you use them without having to go through us that cannot like share things on the commercial matter and blah blah blah. The one thing that I want to acknowledge also is that, of course, if you look at what you have in other software, you're going to see that they have a possibility to do in-application training. It's not something that we are providing right now. We are only providing what you would use to actually load the result of that training. But still, we thought there was value on delivering only the second part, but doing inside application or to be able to train models using your own images from Flame is something that is on our radar as well. The last thing I wanted to, I think if I remember correctly, Jeff, this is something that you mentioned in your video, but I think it's probably the most important thing to understand correctly when it comes to inference, is that there's a JSON sidecar file that you use to define attributes. Okay, so there's a inference builder command line that will actually help you generate a initial JSON sidecar file. But I just wanted it to be clear that the inference builder command line won't go and read all of the information from the models and create the values based on what was in the models. So basically, the JSON sidecar file is where you're gonna define and tell Flame how to act for a specific model. Okay, so this is where you're gonna get some things like in Matchbox, where you can put a note on the node. You can say this input is a front, so it appears in red in the schematic. This is where you're gonna say I'm gonna use the gain because I know that the model was trained for integer images, but Flame needs float values. So you're gonna apply a 255 gain to convert from integer to float. So it's not something that we're gonna read the information and set it for you. It's really how Flame should actually treat that model and display the node correctly. And this is what you're gonna set with the JSON sidecar file. The little exception to that, okay, is the size, basically the clip width and height required by the model. Okay, so usually a model will either let you pass clip from any size or will work only on a fixed size. That information, Flame is able to read it, okay, and to tell you from the application what is the size that is used by the model. So if we quickly go back here, and I have this image here, and I connect it to this inference node using the Candy kind of default test model from the Onix runtime team, you're gonna see that this works only at 720 by 720, and then we give you the filtering precision and Cryptsoft to actually apply the filtering that you want, but there's a resizing that is performed to actually apply the model, and then we tell you that it's going to be output at 1920 by 1080 because that's the size of my source image there. So that was basically what I wanted to show you. Just a little quick note. Louis Martin, Stephane, and myself will be in Europe next month. So we're gonna go to London, visit some customers. Then we're gonna attend IBC in Amsterdam. And then we're doing a user group in Paris with our friend at Logik. So if you are in one of those cities, or if you think that you're gonna attend the IBC, let us know, and we can organize a little bit something to talk with you. And this is all I had to show, Jeff.
And you nailed it. There's 1 minute left.
Yeah.
You did perfect timing.
So
I don't know if we've never done that.
Your wheel.
Yeah, I'm allowed to give away prizes now. If we went over, we wouldn't have been allowed to give away prizes. So this is great. This was a great show. There was a couple things that you mentioned that I didn't know about. So I'm very excited to hear what's on the horizon. I think the crowd loved it. They asked some good questions, and Jasmine was doing a great job answering them, so we didn't have to bother you too much. That was a great show.
Cool.
So thanks a bunch. It looks like everyone is... Mr. Apollo's asking Josh if he wants to go to Amsterdam, so we'll see if we have another visitor there for you. But thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks for your time. We'll see you over on Zoom for the Q&A afterwards, but I appreciate all of that, and I appreciate you. Thanks, guys. It's prize time, though, everybody. We're going to give away Logik Academy Pro 1 free month. So I hope you are ready for this. I am going to shuffle my wheel, and we're going to spin, and we're going to see who's a winner. Winner is none other than Renee Tin. Congratulations, Renee. 1 month of Logik Academy Pro. But it wouldn't be Logik Live if we didn't give away Boris FX Optics. So here we go. 1 year subscription to Boris FX Optics is David Kreitz. Some very familiar names here. Congratulations, David. We did it. Congratulations. And we're going to end the show with a couple of upcoming things and some announcements and some messages from our sponsors. But to start it off, coming up on Logik Live, last time we were live, I mentioned I was interested in hosting a show about painting. I've gotten a few responses, so this is in the works, but it's not soon enough to have a date, but it's coming. And I'm surprised I haven't said this before, but if you have any special requests for a Logik Live, reach out to me or Andy, and we'll do our best to make it happen. That's where this paint show came from, so feedback is more than welcome. If you haven't already signed up with the forums, head on over and do so at forum.logik.tv. While you're there, why don't you sign up and head on over to the Logik Discord, where we're having some of our more informal chats and hangouts. We had an extra special 3-episode event over on the Logik podcast. Actually, one of the people on that podcast is here in the chat right now. If you haven't seen this one yet, Amanda Elliott interviewed Finn Yeager, Richard Betts, and Richard is here too, and Eric Mason about color, specifically covering topics ranging from grading before or after comp in terms of when the grade should take place. And then they talked about common issues we run into in the color pipeline on recent jobs of theirs. Some pitfalls working with Flame and Photoshop and Nuke and After Effects and Resolve. If that's interesting to you, and it's certainly interesting to me, go take a listen and enjoy. It was a great 3-episode. Thanks to Amanda for taking care of organizing that. Take a look. We are clocking in at 2,328 subscribers here on YouTube. As I often say, the number keeps growing, but the goalpost keeps moving. So, of course, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. If you'd like to support what we're doing here on Logik, consider becoming a patron by signing up at patreon.com/LogikTV. Be sure to check out the Logik merch store if you're feeling like acquiring Logik-branded items. A big thank you to Boris FX for sponsoring Logik Live. If you'd like to save 15% on their offerings, you can head on over to logik.tv/BorisFX and click on those links to take advantage of that sweet deal. And a final thank you to Looper, the newest sponsor of Logik Live, the latest and greatest in streaming your client sessions. We have an affiliate link with them to give away 1 month of their Plus plan for free to new users. Just use the URL on your screen that has magically appeared here. tinyurl.com/looper-logic. And that brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you to Fred and Stephane and Jasmine for your time today and for showing off our favorite program. Fred and Stephane and Jasmine will be joining us on Zoom to take part of the Patrons Q&A to dig a little deeper, answer any questions we didn't have time to get to during the show. So I'll see all the patrons and you guys over there. But for now, thanks again to everyone for being here. I appreciate you all, and I'll see you next time on Logik Live.